Welcome, everyone, to the Raleigh Transit Authority meeting. I'll call the meeting to order today at 3:32 p.m. It's June 13th. We will start with introductions. We'll start on the left side of the room today.
Christian Daniels.
Latanya Williams.
Jennifer Truman.
Leo Suarez.
Mark Teague. Byron Leak.
Thanks, everyone, for being here today. As far as minutes, I think we actually need to be reviewing April and May minutes this month. So there are a couple of documents that weren't in board docs right away. So I think what we'll do is actually just hold the approval to the next meeting for those months, if everyone's all right with that. Any protests? Okay. They didn't get in there until a little bit later. So are there any revisions or additions to today's agenda? Anybody? Good agenda as it is, so no problems there. We will open the floor for public comment right at 4 o'clock. If anyone comes in between now and then, there's a sign-up sheet in the back of the room. And we'll roll right into our staff information items today.
All right. Good afternoon, Chair and Raleigh Transit Authority members. My name is Het Patel. I'm with the transit team on the BRT team, and I have today with me staff from Planning and Development that are going to provide an update on the Western and Southern Corridors station area planning work efforts. We talked about this at the last meeting. This was requested a couple of meetings ago, and we're bringing this as an information item for you guys. So I wanted to present an overview of what bus rapid transit is, sort of differentiate the BRT project from the station area planning work efforts, as well as work efforts that other departments do that are related to transit corridors and bus rapid transit. And then the planning and development team will go a little bit more into detail of the scope of the station area planning work efforts, the goal, the current timeline, as well as phase 1 and 2 of engagement that has happened to date, as well as the next phase of the project and the next steps for the project. So bus rapid transit, again, is different from the fixed route services in that it provides specialized vehicles, dedicated bus lanes for the buses to operate in, includes technology like transit signal priority to help get buses to and from their destinations faster and more reliable. We do have more frequent service. It matches our 15-minute high-frequency service for throughout the day, but during peak hours, it actually extends that to every 10 minutes for bus rapid transit. We will have enhanced stations, so level boarding stations that allow for people to get on and off the bus faster. It also allows for easier access for anyone that has a bicycle or mobility devices of any kind to get on and off the bus. We would have off-board fare collection, again, making that step of getting people on and off the bus faster. We have 4 key corridors, and I will not necessarily go into detail on the BRT corridors in this presentation because I do have another item, so we can talk about that later today. But the focus today is on the Southern and Western corridor specifically and the station area planning work efforts that are happening. So I mentioned I wanted to kind of set the stage of the different projects and departments that are all working around the bus rapid transit topic. And so starting off with the transit project itself on the left, the BRT project identifies where the dedicated bus lanes will go. It determines the number of stations, where the stations are going to be, what sort of station spacing we have, how does that influence the ridership based on socioeconomic characteristics as well as existing ridership on the different corridors. And then it helps for planning for the access of multimodal components along the corridor. So directly on the bus rapid transit corridor, we can plan for improvements for multi-use paths, how to get people to those stations safely. The station area planning project has a focus around the land use component, and it focuses typically within the quarter-mile, half-mile radius of the BRT stations as to how to plan for land use that is supportive of those transit projects. It also focuses on first-mile, last-mile connections. So again, this is where going off of the corridor, if there are gaps in the sidewalk network and the bicycle network, the station area planning projects take a look at that and help prioritize where investments should go from a transportation perspective to fill those gaps and get people to the BRT stations more efficiently. It also works on identifying strategies for housing affordability and displacement, as well as strategies for business support during construction and neighborhood stabilization as part of a large catalytic project like bus rapid transit. Then there's the Housing and Neighborhoods Department, division within planning and development that also focuses on the next part of the project, which would be implementation of affordable housing concepts, as well as partnerships for how to develop affordable housing projects on these corridors. And so if the authority is interested, at a future meeting, we could bring someone from housing and neighborhood that could provide updates as to some of the strategic locations where affordable housing projects are being planned on the southern and western corridors. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah Shaughnessy from Planning and Development, who's going to provide the update on the station area planning work.
Thanks, Het. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Again, I'm Sarah Shaughnessy. I work with the Department of Planning and Development. I am the project manager for the Western Corridor Stationary Planning. I'm joined by my colleague, Hannah Reckow, also in Planning and Development, who is the project manager for Southern. I'm going to give the presentation, but we're both available for questions at the end if you have any. So just to reiterate what Het said about the project scope, stationary planning specifically looks at first and last mile mobility. So again, thinking about that trip from your origin to the bus stop and then your final bus stop to your final destination, sort of what that trip looks like and making sure that that's safe and accessible for a variety of modes, depending on what you choose. Looking at housing affordability and anti-displacement measures, so trying to ensure that the affordable housing stock that is already on the corridor stays in place, and also trying to build new housing affordable to a range of income levels. Along the same lines, thinking about supporting and stabilizing the existing businesses along the corridor. That's a key component of the scope. And then also thinking about the underlying zoning, land uses, urban design, public realm improvements that might be associated with stationary planning and corridor improvements. And all of this is underscored by a thorough engagement process that I can talk more about, but really getting input from people about what they want to see in the neighborhoods around the planned stations. So the goals for stationary planning are really rooted in a project that planning and development did in collaboration with other departments called the Equitable Development Around Transit Project, which resulted in a policy guidebook. And that informs a lot of our comprehensive plans and then also sort of the goals for stationary planning. So with that in mind, the ideas are to develop a community vision for growth and development in the station areas, to identify land use changes to maximize public benefit of transit investments, and to identify key opportunities for public and private infrastructure investment, really to leverage that initial investment in transit and make sure that the benefits are shared equitably among all Raleigh residents. So the project timeline, we began this project, both projects, the Southern and the Western projects, in earnest in September in 2023. So we are now in summer 24. We've finished 2 rounds of public engagement. We have compiled a lot of information, both reviewing existing plans, doing some additional market analysis, transportation analysis, collecting impact input from the community. So we're working on compiling that. We'll produce some prioritized recommendations and then come back to the community in the fall to get input on those final recommendations. So goal is to wrap up the process and bring the plans to adoption in the fall or early winter. So as part of the process, we are working with a primary consultant team, Skidmore, Owings, and Merrill for both projects, and then a team of sub-consultant teams. And they've selected a number of station areas on each corridor sort of to use as demonstration sites to illustrate some of the key TOD, transit-oriented development principles and features, to sort of use those to elicit community feedback and public engagement, sort of get some ideas about what people want to see in those station areas. And that information will inform both site-specific recommendations for those station areas as well as some corridor-wide recommendations. So for the Western Corridor, those sort of demonstration sites are Powell Drive, which is a little bit more residential, sort of lower density neighborhood context. Blue Ridge Road at Western, which is the former Kmart site, so currently a large area, currently vacant. The Food Lion site on Western near Method Road, and then the Mission Valley Shopping Center. And for the Southern Corridor, they've been working on the station at City Farm Road, Pecan Road, and Chapin Oak Road. So these are just a few of the station areas planned for the entire route, but sort of focusing on those as demonstration sites. And then, as mentioned before, a key part of this is thinking about multimodal connectivity. So looking at half-a-mile radius around the station areas, reviewing crash history, walk-shed information, and then also public feedback around where pain points might be or where sort of key projects could really improve overall connectivity to the sites, and thinking about tiering those into high, medium, and low-scale interventions, both in terms of sort of the intensity and expense, and also the impact the interventions could have in improving safety. Another component is housing. So to date, we've done some residential market analysis to look at the existing housing stock, and then also along both corridors. And then our team has reviewed a lot of research to identify tools and strategies to preserve existing affordable housing, create new housing, and prevent displacement. So those recommendations are part of what we'll be bringing to the public again in the fall. Then I don't have a slide on this, but our business engagement has been similar. So non-residential market analysis, looking at sort of the retail, some of the office uses that are located outside of downtown, but along both corridors, and thinking about strategies for business preservation. And then so our engagement process has been anchored by 3 rounds of public open houses. We have completed 2 of those rounds already. And we'll have, as I said, a third probably in September. Each of those phases, there have been a range of events and opportunities to participate. So they've concluded with 2 big public open houses that have been in person at different community centers, and then an online version. But leading up to that, we've had a number of meetings with existing neighborhood organizations, CACs. We've had pop-up events. We've met one-on-one with different organizations and stakeholders to inform the process. We have a community leader group, which is a group that was appointed by City Council. They applied, we reviewed the applications, and then brought them to City Council for each corridor, and they advise on the broader engagement strategy. So it's a diverse group of people who live or work along the corridor and help us make sure that the message and the information we're trying to get out there resonates with people, and we're using the right methods and channels to reach people. And then lastly, we have 2 paid community connectors per corridor. So we work with them to provide more direct outreach and canvassing to residents. So they have in the past ridden the bus and delivered flyers or QR codes to surveys, or delivered flyers in advance of our open houses. So some of the information that we've heard so far, we've received a lot of feedback around sort of what specific sidewalk improvements might be, what specific improvements might be for bike connections to bus stops. We've gotten a number of comments about using the existing Greenway network and connecting that to existing and planned bus stations. We've heard a lot about the need for deep affordability, so 40% AMI and below. Interest in ensuring a variety of retail options from a land use perspective, zoning for more mixed use so that you have sort of retail and other options in addition to residential within the station areas. Desire for pedestrian-oriented development and sort of human-scaled development. Heard a lot about the need to preserve and celebrate historic character and sort of the neighborhood character of each of the stations. I know the Western Corridor is a little over 11 miles long, and there's a lot of diversity, both in terms of cultural and also just the built environment and place types. So really recognizing and celebrating those differences seems to be important to people. Business support, so again, providing incentives to keep existing businesses in place, opportunities to improve foot traffic, especially during construction, so that those businesses can stay in business. And then some information about what people want to see in terms of public space improvements. So next steps, we're planning for our final round of engagement in August and September. This will include a lot of the same types of events. So a couple of pop-up events trying to meet the community where they are. In the past, we've used the community engagement van, and we've been at the Food Lion site. I think on the southern corridor, we've been to some grocery stores, to International Foods. So trying to meet people where they might already be shopping, already out and about, and share information. More presentations to neighborhood organizations. We'll have an online survey to accompany 2 in-person open house events, and then again, an online webinar. So that's all I have. Again, happy to take questions. There's our contact information if you want to follow up later.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
It's a question about when you're talking about the affordable housing, are they looking at like basically the cost of living for rent, like in that area along that line?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
because specifically like right where Pecan Road is, like Pecan and South Saunders, if you go about half a mile down, like by the time you get to Tryon, those new apartments, the affordability changes. So when they say what's affordable, is that a price level, like per month of what people are
Yeah,
paying?
usually affordability is defined in terms of the area median income and a percentage of that area median income. So I think for a family of 1, it's maybe around $80,000 a year, maybe a little less. And it's varies by family size, but the thresholds for affordability are set. So usually we talk about 30% AMI or area median income, 60%, and sort of our policies to preserve and create affordability are kind of framed around those levels.
Because and just kind of clarify, because the main thing for affordability a lot of times these days is just how much are you paying per month, more so than what the median areas. Because within 3 blocks you can go from $800 a month to $1,300 a month, and so if someone gets displaced, where can they go? Because the new buildings are more expensive now.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of when they think about affordability, that's what the people in that area, or even myself, because I kind of live over there. But it's about how much can people afford a month in that region, more so than median incomes, a lot of times. I just want to know if they look at that, based off of, if you build a new line, the good things can come, more traffic, more businesses, things like that. That may also bring in more building, but when they start building new housing, the people who are in that area may get placed out and can't even afford the new housing that's right down the road. So I just want to know if they consider that aspect more than just like median income.
Yeah, that's a great point, and we do. I think our team looks at sort of what monthly rent costs are, and also what those percentages might be as a part of your entire household income. Yeah, I appreciate the comment.
Are there other questions for Het or Sarah or Hannah?
I have a question. I don't know if it has reached the design element yet, but are the BRT lanes going to be in the center, such as Newbern?
That is a question for Het.
Yeah, so that is a BRT design question. As we get to different milestones of design, so for Western, we're at a preliminary design of about 15%. So we're still figuring that out on the Western corridor, exactly where the dedicated bus lanes will go, if they're on the right side of the road or if they're going to be in median. The short answer is there will be a mix of right side running and median running dedicated bus lanes for the Southern corridor and for the Western corridor. For the Southern corridor, we do have a little bit more detail because we're at about 30% design, and we can show where the right side running dedicated bus lanes are and where the median running bus lanes are, but we don't have that detail for Western yet.
Excuse me, where are you? Are APS and tactiles used? Will they be used for the bus stops?
Yes, for the station platforms, tactiles are used to guide people to where the door locations will be and how to get on and off the bus.
Okay, and the audible pedestrian signals?
We do have audible pedestrian signals at every signalized intersection, and we will have speakers at the BRT stations as well, so that will be announcing audibly the next bus arrival as well as general service announcements.
Okay, thank you.
To follow up on Mr. Teague, I think if when the design percentage is at the correct point, Mr. Walker, could we bring some of those station details to route committee probably? Because that's where we usually look at shelters and just have the chance for everyone to know what's going on. and I'll take other questions. I did want to thank planning folks for being here. I think it's really important. This committee is tasked with a lot of the design advice decisions around the BRT and how the stations will be laid out, but also how other bus routes and pedestrian and bike connections are made at those stops. And so we are often in each month in route committee talking about those items down to minute details about which ADA accessibility features and where there are crosswalks and where is there a trash can or not a trash can. And so being able to connect those minute details to the larger planning process is absolutely essential. So that's why we wanted you guys here today. And also so that we can know as a committee, like what's the best way for us to connect into your station area planning. We may or may not be able to make it to every public open house, just like other members of the public. Sure. So what's the best way for us to let you know if we have specific feedback that may relate to our work on this committee?
Yeah, if you can make it, when we have those event details finalized, we'll share them with you to share, or with transit staff to share with you all. We'd love for you to come. That's probably the best way, but certainly if you have other comments that you'd like to share, our contact information is there, so we can integrate that into the rest of the public feedback that we get. And we'll put out an online survey as well, so if you can't come to any of the in-person or make the online event, you'll still have an opportunity to go through each of the recommendations in detail and provide feedback on those.
Okay. And then just a little bit more specifically, the key station locations that you mentioned, it's like 3 or 4 for each corridor. At what point are the ideas and designs for those stations made available for public review?
Those will come with the final engagement process, so probably August, September. Yeah.
Okay. That's helpful. Are there other questions from the table?
Just one last question.
Go ahead.
Byron. The people, for all of the people who live along that western corridor or the southern corridor, how do they know when you guys are having open houses? Like,
We do a very large public mailing to everyone within half a mile, and then we also post yard signs. So if people live in a multi-tenant property or there's issues with addressing, hopefully they get the information. Yep. Oh, we also do canvassing. So we have an engagement team and then work with our community connectors to do some door-to-door outreach as well. Yeah.
Other questions? Thank you very much. It was really exciting to hear the progress that's been made, and so many moving parts here that it's good to reconnect and touch base a couple times a year and understand how we're all working together to make these things change equitably and serve the community better.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm waiting for my agenda to come up so I know what's next. I think that we'll move through to the New Bern Avenue update, and we'll take public comment after that.
Thank you. Het Patel again, Transportation Transit Team, BRT. This will be short, so hopefully I can be done in the 5 minutes and have public comment at 4. Wanted to provide an update on the New Bern Avenue BRT project. Again, we have 4 key corridors. We always start our BRT presentations with these slides. New Bern Avenue is the furthest advanced at that construction phase. The southern corridor has started the final design phase, and the western corridor is in preliminary design at the moment. The northern corridor is in a planning study, as well as the additional 2 extensions there from Garner to Clayton and Cary to Research Triangle Park as an extension. Both of those extensions are currently actually being studied by the Capital Area MPO as the project sponsor, but the City of Raleigh is highly engaged as it being a BRT project and providing feedback. New Bern Avenue, just to remind everyone, is the eastern corridor for bus rapid transit coming out of downtown Raleigh, 5.4 miles with 3.3 miles of dedicated bus lanes, 10 new stations between downtown Raleigh and New Hope Road via Wake Med, connecting to the eastern part of Wake County. 7 new 60-foot articulated buses. You guys got to ride in one of those when we had the retreat, as well as the orientation, I guess, earlier this year. And we would have signal priority at all the signalized intersections along New Bern Avenue. As I mentioned, this project is in that construction phase. In March of this year, working with the Engineering Services Department, we put out construction bid advertisement, and at the pre-submittal meeting, contractors had requested an extension to the bid opening date, so we had provided that to meet those requests and extended the bid opening to May of 2024, May 7th to be exact. And on May 7th, we did not receive any bids for construction for the BRT project, so that was unfortunate. And we have been working for the rest of May as well as the first couple weeks of June, both with engineering services staff and transportation staff, reaching out to the different interested contractors, trying to get a better understanding of what some of the challenges were from their perspective for why they did not pursue to submit a bid for construction. And so we are at a stage where we're developing plans for how we will re-advertise the construction of the project. And once we have more clarity on that, we can bring that back to you guys. And I'll be happy to answer any questions. Oh, wait, sorry. One more slide, next steps. So as I mentioned on New Bern, continuing to coordinate with NCDOT and FTA, but re-advertising the construction this year for getting that back out there on the street. For the Southern Corridor, continuing to work with Town of Garner, DOT, and FTA to continue to advance that final design forward. Western Corridor, we are working on our small starts ratings application. Typically, the deadline for that is in that second to last week or last week of August. So that will be August 2024 this year. Most of the times, we have brought the presentation for what is included in the ratings application for a particular corridor to RTA at their September meeting, because at that point we have all the information to share with you guys. And then we would be transitioning to final design starting for the Western Corridor in early 2025. And then for the Northern Corridor, we have had some engagement on the initial screening of alternatives. So we are working on refining those alternatives and then conducting detailed screening and then holding another round of public engagement later this year on the detailed screening of alternatives. So that is something, again, that we can bring to Route Committee at an appropriate time. And then I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have about New Bern Avenue.
Questions from the table?
Yeah, so you said you were getting feedback from the bidders about the reasons why they are not bidding. Can you share that, or you don't know yet?
No, so I can certainly share some of the feedback we've received so far. Our initial advertisement included a construction window of 24 months. We have heard that that provided a lot of risk and uncertainty for contractors who wanted a longer time frame for construction. So we are working with our consultant teams to identify what a balanced, appropriate schedule for construction may be, as well as trying to figure out if we can incentivize contractors to provide a certain amount of schedule for construction, but then have incentives to finish early. So we are looking at that as an option. Additionally, some of the other challenges were, again, there are some utilities in the corridor that are currently relocating. There's uncertainty from the contractor community on that schedule of when they will actually have the right-of-way clear to start beginning work, and that ties down back to the schedule and being held to that 2-month or 2-year construction window. Some of the other feedback we've received is from some of the subcontractors that work on the vertical component, which is the stations and not the linear component, not necessarily always knowing which one of the prime contractors may have wanted to submit a bid or not submit a bid, so there's uncertainties there. So we are looking again at options that could potentially separate the construction part of the project with linear and vertical separation to allow for more opportunities for the different contractors to submit bids.
Are these local contractors or outside of?
They're local, state-wide contractors. There are some regional contractors as well. From a construction perspective, probably not large enough for national interest, but certainly there's 4 BRT corridors, so we hope that there would be more state regional contractors interested.
I guess I want to bring this up because as a lessons learned, we have 3 more corridors we need to work on. So it's just like, when was the construction bid put out, and can it be put out sooner so we won't have these delays and questions and concerns, or something we can foresee in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is part of the process is really figuring out what your construction window should be for a project this scale. This is one of the first BRT projects in the state, so there is also uncertainty from that perspective. Even on the contractor side, not having done this type of work in this area, having the partnerships in place to bid out on a project. One of the feedback we received was more time to actually put bids together. So again, we extended that time frame in that initial advertisement. We will do the same for the next advertisement as well.
And just last point, probably maybe we need to expand this regionally to get more people who have actually done this type of work. Because if locally, if these people can't do it, that means we need to look outside. And I think 24 months is reasonable because a lot of people in the area complain about construction taking so long, and sometimes you don't see any work done. So if 24 months is not enough time, I think that particular contractor, we need to move on.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
I will say that regional contractors did attend pre-submittals. Again, I think there is a lot of work out there right now. So, NCDOT has a lot of projects that are out for construction bids as well in different areas that are significantly more larger from a scale perspective. And so that's where resources may be tied up. And so we're just learning as we go.
What plan set has been submitted to the contractors?
The
Final
full
set?
final design plan set for New Bern Avenue, linear and stations.
So it's the permit drawings.
Permanent drawings, yes. Construction drawings.
And when was the initial ITB submitted?
March 2024,
What was the due date?
May 2024. So it's 2 months window.
Yeah, that's the issue.
Yeah.
Realistically, the contractors are going to need, give or take, 16 weeks to talk to their subcontractors. The subcontractors are going to need additional 8 weeks to put together their bid. And that permit set's going to change, and then they're going to have to rebid a redesigned set. I think you draw that timeline out and give them a realistic drop-dead date. I think that might be the most beneficial for your time rather than submit a 8-week deadline.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was gonna, go ahead, Leo.
At a high level, do we anticipate any knock-on effects with New Bern to impact delaying the other corridors in any way, or can you see them as decoupled?
They're decoupled, and honestly, I would say, some of the conversations you guys have had at the table, New Bern is going to help us put Southern in a position that when we are ready to bid construction, we have a clear picture of the best way to do that.
Yeah, I was just going to say that definitely appreciate the efforts in trying to get contractor feedback on what will work and then what they actually come to. I think in the private market, we see the exact same thing. There's a lot of work out there in this region, and being competitive in that process is sometimes also a lot of work. So thank you guys for doing that and being responsible stewards of the city's money and the funds that are involved in that. It does seem like New Bern is probably a project that is the scale at which that's most difficult, and Southern and Western being bigger, I think hopefully may not have some of the same issues, but also I think the advice to think about splitting it up in creative ways is going to be critical here. But thank you for the updates. Continue to bring them back either at committees or to the whole board as things move along. Of course, I think all of us in some capacity get asked, when is it going to start happening? When can we ride those big orange buses on a regular basis? So we like to be able to give up-to-date information.
Thank you. Sounds good.
Thank you.
I would like to ask one additional question.
Go ahead.
Is the safety concern of pedestrians traveling over multiple lanes, especially those that have disabilities, of them going to the middle to board the bus, the floating platforms?
I would say that we have made the design more accessible by having them at the signalized intersections and having the audible crosswalks, having them at higher visibility crosswalks. And then depending on the direction of travel, you would actually be crossing less lanes in some ways when you're trying to get to the median than you would if you were to try to get to the outbound station on the other side of the road. So it does reduce some components there. I think that's another aspect of the design itself. Again, having the stations in the median, reducing some of the lane widths in the general purpose lanes tries to slow the traffic down as well to make it safer for people to see pedestrians as they're going, so that they're not going too fast, hopefully.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Teague, for bringing that up. I know I've brought up similar concerns about the center stations in the past. I can tell that the design has evolved just from the renderings that you guys are showing at the meetings. It may be valuable, particularly after you guys finish the Smart Starts for Western, to come back to Route with some details about how those station area designs they've really evolved a lot as you guys have gotten deeper into the design process.
Yeah.
And I think it would be helpful to see those and get feedback with the consultants even at committee level.
Okay, we can do that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yes, Mr. Walker? Yes. We rolled through 4 o'clock. It is 4:08. So we're just going to check and see if we have any public comments. I think we do.
Ms. Helen Tart.
Awesome. And just as Helen, as you come up, I just wanted to acknowledge that we have 2 counselors in the room. Counselor Corey Branch is here and Counselor Christina Jones. Thank you for coming to the meeting and paying attention to Transit Matters.
Actually, I was watching you guys on TV, and I saw that you were getting updates on the BRT, and I am on the former DMV working group, and one of the reasons that I wanted to be on that working group is because I thought it would be a good opportunity to put a major station for the BRT that is integrated into the community, which I think it's unfortunate that the most of these stations will be in the middle of the highway, so they can't be integrated into the community as and I think this would be a good opportunity. So I thought I would invite you guys to come to our meeting. Tallulah Pay is actually one of the members also. So she, I'm sure will have lots of comments. And but I did want to, since you were talking about it, I thought I would trot down here and invite you guys. So I hope maybe y'all will, it's at 6 o'clock at Martin Street Baptist Church. So I know Leo won't be there.
Today?
Today, yes. So anyway, I thought it would also be a good idea to let you guys know what I'm thinking about and what, and maybe that might end up making it easier for along construction, so that you have a partnership, more of a partnership with the community as far as getting construction companies to be willing to bid on this wonderful project that I have been hoping for decades. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you.
And for being on the work group. I'm sure that you and Tallulah both bring a good amount of local expertise in terms of how different projects need to work together on that site in particular. Certainly we have planning come back and forth to come see us because we know that transit and land use work hand in hand. So whatever we can do to support you, and we appreciate the invitation. Were there any other comments? Okay. Thank you. Counselors, did either of you have comments you'd like to make? Seeing no's. Okay. We're going to move along in the agenda then to the year-end review presentation from the management company, RITP Dev. We have made it into an entire year with them serving as our contractor for Go Raleigh. We are excited to have you come and tell us how the year has been.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Michael Birch. I am the Vice President of Operations for RATP Dev. I oversee most of the East Coast operations that we have. It's my pleasure to be here to talk about the success. And we also noticed that we have a bunch of new board members as well. So we thought we'd give you a little presentation about what RATP is, kind of what our history has been in service. And I noticed we were a little ahead of schedule on the agenda. So I have like a 65 slide PowerPoint presentation to get you back on time. So I'm just teasing. So RATP Dev is a French-owned company, and it's been around for 120 years. So you've contracted with a company that has a fantastic history in public transit. RATP Dev loosely translates in French to the Autonomous Parisian Transportation Administration, and it was founded originally to find a solution to cross the Seine River in downtown Paris. That's where the original concept of moving people, and that happened in the late 1800s. As you can see, this is kind of the timeline that takes you from there to now. I jumped into the organization under the McDonald Transit umbrella. McDonald Transit and Associates was a management company that was formed in 1972. Started off managing the Fort Worth Transportation Authority, and then expanded from there. RATP Dev acquired McDonald Transit in 2009. And then rebranded it in 2017. Our company headquarters for RATP Dev USA is still now in Fort Worth. I spend most of my time in North Carolina, and there's an ever expanding footprint that we have in this area that we're really proud to talk about. But before we get to the United States, we are in 5 continents and 15 other countries. So if you see a country up there that you'd like to visit, I can get you a free pass to ride the transit there. Just let me know. We're really proud of our footprint worldwide, and we operate not just buses. You name the transportation, we do everything but fly. So metros, trams, buses, rails, maritime shuttles, cable cars, sightseeing tour buses. RATP Dev is involved in all those projects. Just some quick facts. We do 1.4 billion in revenue. That was in 2022. Presence in 15 countries. We serve 780 cities worldwide, and we have over 24,000 employees. So we're a big company. We are in the United States. RATP Dev USA only has a few. There's only a few contracting companies really in the world nowadays, but there's only a few here, and we're probably the third largest here in the United States. I mean, we think that gives us a little bit of an advantage. One of our big talk tracks with our customers is the concierge level service. We are big enough that we bring this huge amount of experience and history from our company, but we're also small enough that you get individualized attention. I supervise currently 9 contracts. My counterparts at my competitors will have 40 or 50 contracts that they're responsible for. So when Mr. Walker or Mr. Eatman call, I'm right here in North Carolina. And I think I officially spent more nights in North Carolina in the last year than I did in Texas, where my home is. Please don't tell the Department of Revenue. I don't want to pay any extra North Carolina tax. But here's our United States footprint. We're pretty much coast to coast, and you can see lots of dots in North Carolina. Raleigh is our biggest contract. So you also get the most attention from our corporate office. We also have contracts in Durham, Greensboro, Asheville, Buncombe County, Wake County, and my fellow colleague is right now working on the startup in Winston-Salem. We were just awarded that contract here in the last few months. So again, North Carolina is we call it a kind of a centralized area focused with our organization, and we've had great success here. We're very, very proud of the operations. I mostly personally am proud of the Raleigh operation. I've been here since the very first day. worked on the startup and the transition. It was very complicated, very complex, and I think I think the local team that we have here employed to operate your service has done just a phenomenal job. And Tanya's gonna come up and tell you about some of those accomplishments in a few minutes. Just a quick snapshot. You'll probably never see these people on a PowerPoint ever again. But Matt Buterbaugh is our newly appointed Chief Executive Officer. Matt's been with the company, I think, since around 2016. He led the business development, and then he ran operations. He's been my boss for the last 4 or 5 years now. He was just recently named. Matt Buterbaugh has been here several times during the startup. He is a familiar face to your senior leadership team that oversees our contract, and the rest of those folks round out the executive and leadership team from a corporate level. Just about all these people have been here at least once or twice along the way. We're very proud of our vision. I really like our vision statement. It's to make distances feel shorter and to bring people together. So we're not really focused on vehicles. We're not focused on routes. We're focused on people. And our organization has always put kind of a people first approach to all the business we do. And I think it's reflective in the operations that we have. These are kind of our core values. Safety is our number one piece. I'm very, very proud of the safety record here in Raleigh, and Tanya's going to highlight it as part of her talking points today. But as a sneak peek preview, we've never started up a contract of this magnitude and this size and done so well from a safety perspective. We have a highly engaged safety team that's working, and we have an incredible team of trainers that take the professionalism of operating a vehicle very, very seriously. We have a couple members from our union staff that work. Michael General is the president of our local union. He's one of our trainers, but they do an excellent job, and I think that's a huge part of our success with our safety record here. As I mentioned, we are a people-facing organization first. We talk about people the most. Most of our employees have grown from within the organization. A lot of us came up from entry-level positions. My first job in transit, I was a security guard who rode buses in Indianapolis, and I worked my way up through the ladder. In transit, that's not uncommon. Lots of people have been bus operators, and it's a great way to learn the business and learn the industry. One other thing we like to point out, we're a very firm believer in data and also technology. One of the things that we're really proud of, we just launched this probably about 2 years ago. It's called Blink. In transit, it's really difficult to communicate with frontline employees because they're not in the building. They're out driving buses and they're in the community, and they're really hard to reach, and it's hard to push messages, it's hard to communicate. So we've partnered with this company called Blink, and it's essentially an internal, you might refer to as kind of like a social media site for employees. So we're able to push everything from like, hey, we have overtime available tonight, to watch out for the branch that's hanging down on Route 2 as you're passing through this intersection. We're able to push this information out in real time. And it also allows the employees to return feedback to the management staff. And so we're all connected to it. And we think it's a great way to reach people who are somewhat remote. We also really believe in serving the communities that we live in. Tanya and I are currently working on our next community action program, but we want RATP Dev to be known throughout the greater Raleigh community. We want to participate in community events, and we're going to be you're going to see us more involved in community stuff. Beautifications, sponsorships, charitable giving are all part of our key values. So a couple of, before I turn it over to Tanya, I did want to talk really quickly. The contract's been running since April of 2023. You're gonna hear about significant improvements in safety. We still have lots of work to do. We are an organization that believes in continuous improvement. So we never really stand pat and pat ourselves on the back. We're always looking for what's the new thing, what's the next thing we can do to improve services. As I mentioned, I'm very proud of this leadership team. It is my pleasure to announce today that we have officially promoted Tanya Dupree to the general manager position. She has been with the organization since the very, very first day. She and I kind of walked in together on the startup. And Tanya has done just an excellent job. She's been really a key piece of how successful this operation has been since we started it. She's done just an excellent job. So we've officially, it's official as of June 1 that Tanya is the general manager. And I'm also like to introduce Brian Andrews, who is replacing Tanya as the deputy general manager. And Brian has a wealth of transit knowledge as well. He comes from Go Triangle. So between Tanya and Brian, we feel like we have a really, really good senior leadership team. They're already working really in close collaboration with David Walker and the rest of the city staff. So we're really proud of this team and what they've accomplished. And I'm going to turn it over to Tanya to cover some of those highlights now. Thank you very much. Unless you have any questions for me. Free pass, anyone? To Italy.
You're safe for today. Oh,
Belgium.
one question.
Gotcha. Thank you all
Thank
very
you.
much. I'm sorry, this is not Tanya Dupree. This is Tressica Amity, and she's going to cover some of the key performance indicators for paratransit first. Sorry, Tressica.
You're fine. Good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you for being here.
So first, we have up for the paratransit for the past year where we come from. So for paratransit, you guys know we started as of July 1st. So from there to where we are now in the service. So from prior ridership on the vans have gone up by 101%. We are able to do that by providing service in hours that the taxis or other providers are not able to run, and we're also able to run the weekends and Sundays now. So we run the full hours in which the fixed routes run. We also, the on-time performance, we're able to get that metrics now. They are currently at about 91.8%. The requirement is, or what was asked is 85, so we're trying to be at least 91.8%, and that's been going for the last 3-4 months consecutive, and that is with us picking up any trips that are given back or any late trips that a provider can't get. We're out there picking them right on up. The Go Raleigh has increased by overall 206%. And then as far as the customer's complaints, prior it was done in a week by the prior vendor. We try to answer all complaints within 72 hours back into the system so that we can take care of the passengers who has any issues or anything's come up. We also changed software. So prior they had Route Match. Now we have EcoLane. This software allows for a GPS system, easy booking. It has a driver's app. It also allows for us to do accurate reporting for services, route managing, and make things more efficient for the passengers that ride the Access program. And then the taxi cost has also been cut by 50% from the prior year. And then we do a lot of community engagements, and we try to be a part of all the meetings with any of the committees that actually passengers ride the Access program. And then we also, like I said, increase the service hours. And our hours of operations are right there in which we have changed to meet the needs of the passengers. Are there any questions for the Access?
Yes, you said that the taxi vendor payments have decreased by 50%. How did we accomplish that? I mean, that's major.
So with the software, we're able to get the trips booked. We've cut as far as like a lot of trips that are considered no-shows. And so if the passengers are able to go ahead and get those canceled through the system, through the phone service that they receive, as well as calling in. So that has all contributed to it. We're able to pinpoint when people are actually taking their trips, being picked up and stuff. So therefore, we actually get reports now that tell us what's happening so that we can go in and find, and then we reach out to the passengers as well to make sure the service is being performed the way it's supposed to.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
On one end, what about if, especially like towards the later parts of the evening, I see that if they go till 11 p.m., what about like late night no-shows from the taxi side? Like if somebody orders one, but it's a short trip, but they don't show because it's a
So-
short trip and late.
So
things like
we
that.
go ahead and extend. So we actually have a route and the driver is here, the dispatch is here till 11:30. So if a call comes in or they get back a trip, we just extend that driver's route. The system allows for us to extend it, and that way we send that driver to do the passenger trip for them, to not leave them stranded at all.
This might be a staff question, but doesn't the van service cost us 3 times the amount as the taxi vendor? So I'm concerned with the increase of the van service because that's going to, restrict our budget.
Well, quite frankly, the reason for the increase in the majority of the extra work that RATP Dev has been able to pick up is because taxi providers are giving trips back. Late at night, as Ms. Amity suggested, on weekends is where the majority of their extra work has come in. And, taxis are operating as brokers. They're not under contract, so they can turn their service on and turn their service off whenever they want. And if at 6 o'clock this afternoon, 3 taxis decide they're going to bring their taxis to the garage, they can do that with no penalties. And they basically give all those trips back to RATP Dev, and then so they're swooping in at the last minute and taking care of the passengers so they're not stranded.
But is it true it cost us 3 times
It
as
does
much?
absolutely cost quite a bit more to operate a van than it does a taxi to provide one trip.
And I'm still confused about the rides because even when I've read the metrics and I add the cancellations and I add the no-shows, compared to 23, there is substantial reduction in rides. May of last year, there was 50,000 rides. Now we are averaging about 28,000 a month.
Yeah, we are not declining any trips, period. If somebody calls in and books a trip through our reservation system, that trip is provided. The Echo Lane software benefit is that it provides a level of validation for those trips that we have not had in the past. So that's...
So prior, there was no metrics or any information kept on the trips that were booked? Because, we did have 50,000 last May.
We had a record of a trip being called in. We had a record of that trip being sent out to a taxi provider, and then we would receive an invoice at the end of the month asking for reimbursement for the trips that they received. The software, the Route Match software, had no way to physically validate or track the way the Echo Lane software does. So I'm sure you're aware that the driver has to have the software on. It's just like an Uber or Lyft. You have the software active, you click that you've picked up a passenger, you drive that passenger to their destination, you click that passenger has been dropped off, that trip is cleared and it's validated, and there's GPS tracking to support that trip. And we use that validation through the software to pay that taxi provider.
And I think, Mr. Teague, we have spent a fair amount of time on this kind of topic in committee as well. As I know you're aware, I think, as a board, one of the reasons that we and staff work together to get a new software and advise that we get a new software was in order to increase that accountability. And I think to the RATP dev team's credit, when they came on board, I think during some very difficult times of implementing that a month after taking over the whole service, what we've seen is that we were right that we did need more accountability in our system. And we've been able to see the cost savings effect of having that type of system. And I think time will tell how I don't think we expect to see costs go down again by this amount. But certainly there's more software abilities, and time will tell how that serves the community better and is more fiscally responsible than what we had before. I think if there's other detailed metrics that we want to dig in month to month, I think the Committee for Finance and Policy is the right place to do that. Certainly be willing to have staff or RTP Dev bring those numbers to committee if you would like.
Madam Chair, I was just going to add, as much as I would love to stand up here and take credit for reducing those kind of costs to that percentage, a lot of the credit for that goes to the staff's decision to change. EcoLane is, in my opinion, we have it rolled out, I think, at 28 of our 38 properties now. It is a game-changing piece of software. And I can talk I promise I won't talk too long, but one of the really cool features of EcoLane is that it's constantly rebooking trips to the closest vehicle. That's a capability that Route Match simply doesn't have. So if a ride comes up and there happens to be a vehicle closer to the one that was regularly scheduled, it automatically cancels the first bus and it rebooks the trip on the bus that's closest. That kind of efficiency, it's almost like AI intelligence that's making those decisions. Tressica's really smart, but she can't do that. But it really is the staff's investment in the change from Route Match to EcoLane is what's driving your efficiency, and we're doing a pretty good job too. But I just like to compliment the staff. It was somewhat of a controversial decision to change software, and I think it's proven itself in the numbers that we've reported tonight. I just wanted to throw that out there. It's a real success story to your program.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Walker, and your team. I cannot say that enough. So, do you have further paratransit presentation?
No, that's it for paratransit. Ms. Tanya is actually coming to do the fix.
Oh, Ms. Williams.
Oh, I did have
That
one
is,
question.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Yeah.
Go ahead with your question.
Going back to the customer complaints for 72 hours, are we responding back to the customers or we're just answering the complaints?
So we actually, our procedure is we actually reach out to the customers. We give them phone calls as well. Some send it through email. We respond back, get a phone number. If it's with a vendor or something, we actually reach out to the vendor. We speak to the owners and stuff, and then in return, we try to come up with a resolution and have it back to the passenger in satisfaction of whatever may have went on. We also do a list now that for those that continually have the same issues, we actually kind of monitor their trips. So we put them on a monitoring list so that we can actually kind of stay right on top of those passengers if it doesn't get resolved in the first or second time that happens, so that we can leave them there for at least anywhere from 30 to 60 days. And in that time frame, we see how it's going, check in. Staff would call them periodically just to see how their rides are going. And at that moment, once they tell us everything is well, they're removed from the list, and then we'll add somebody else if needed.
Okay. Is there a goal to reduce the amount of time to respond?
As far as to complaints,
Yes.
well, 72 hours give us time to fully investigate, because you may send something, but we have to contact the provider or see whatever happened, check videos, things to that nature. So we're trying to be as thorough as possible so that when we give the response, we're giving it accordingly. There are times that it's a lot less than 72 hours and stuff. If one is available, it could be within 24 hours of the same day if we're able to get it resolved for you.
I guess, is there a response knowing that I sent the complaint that it's actually being looked at? So is there a generic communication back to the complaint to say it's actually been received, or is the person just waiting 72 hours?
No, they're not waiting 72 hours. Once we get the complaint, we go ahead and initiate a call to you or either respond in the email to let you know we're looking into it.
Okay. Thank
That's
you.
immediately, and we don't send out generic. It's actually one of us physically calling you, or myself, or the one that handles the complaint actually sending you an email, and you'll have all our contact information in it.
Okay.
The 72-hour mark is when it's done.
Done.
Resolved.
So probably say resolve versus a response, because I would think
Oh,
you're
well,
responding
resolved in
in 3
72
days.
hours.
I'd be like, that's a long time for a response to
Yeah,
anybody.
72
so-
hours resolved. Any other questions?
It'll improve your metrics.
Huh?
It'll improve your metrics.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I do have a comment. You guys are doing a great job. I get very little complaints now from the community for the paratransit. I want to thank you.
It's appreciated. We thank you. Actually, the month of May, I think y'all didn't have any complaints come in through the system. So I was actually like, yeah. So we appreciate you guys, and we thank you.
At 91%, that's wonderful. On-time performance. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So
Before you start, Ms. Dupree, congratulations on your
thank
general
you
manager
very,
position.
very much. I'm excited. I told you last month, I'm ready to go.
Now you can start.
So we'll start with just a few of the KPIs for Fitzgerald, and then I'll wrap it up with some of the accomplishments that we've made throughout the year. So the first one I want to talk about is safety. For the year, we had 35 total preventable accidents. That is a 45% decrease from the previous year of preventable accidents. And we also maintained our target goal for the year of less than 1.09 accidents per 100,000 miles. So staffing. You can see we started with 181. As of April, we had 203. As of tomorrow, with the graduating class, we'll have 215, with 15 remaining in classes. And remember, our goal is to get to 230 for this most recent service change. Missed trips. It's been sporadic. From the beginning all the way through April. In April, we had 284 missed trips. In May, we had 192, and thus far this month we have 35. So even though we had a service increase in May, we are seeing a decrease in the missed trips. We had a high absenteeism in April. We're contributing the missed trips to the increase in headcount and absenteeism being somewhat better at the beginning part of May and the beginning of June. On-time performance, this is one that, again, we're not proud of, but if you remember last month, I told you that April would not be great, and that we put some things into place, and that we are starting to see some improvements. We're bringing in some of the drivers that are leaving time points early. We call them like the top 25. We bring them in daily, talk to them. We're also working with the planning team to see if there's anything that we can put on the stops to identify that it's a time point, so newer drivers can look at it and know, hey, this is the time point. I need to make sure that I'm not leaving early. Because again, what we found is that a lot of this on-time performance issue is related to operators leaving early. Complaints, you can see April was a really high complaint month, and much of that was missed stop and missed trips, some employee behavior. If we miss a trip and then we assign an operator to the trip, they get the backlash from the previous trip being missed. So a lot of that had to do with the complaint increase in April. And again, we do the same thing. When we see those operators that are having those complaints, we bring them in and we have a conversation. You know, it starts as an initial counseling, and again, stressing the importance of customer service and letting them know the value that they add to the community. All right, so accomplishments. Safety, as I mentioned already, we decreased 45% over the past year. DriveCam was new technology that we implemented. When we first started, we had a performance score of 2 stars. We now are at 4, with 5 being the maximum stars that you can obtain. Service increase, we returned to regular service in January and had an increase in service in May, and are gearing up for additional service increase in September. Security, we accessed our facilities. We changed out our card reader badge accesses for our employees. We upgraded some lighting down at the access facility. And then there's also the new security at Go Raleigh Station, being the Capitol Police. We're also in the process of hiring a security director. We're in the interview process, and we think we may have a final candidate. Labor management, we're continuing to work with the union to improve relations, and we do have a signed CBA. Technology, again, we have the DriveCam, which it's a device that's on the buses, and it identifies any types of risky behavior. Safe Tracker is our accident tracking system, and OptiBus is the new system that we're using for dispatching. Staffing, we increased our headcount to 215. We, again, have 15 currently in training, so hopefully we'll be at that 230 number soon. We're developing partnerships with North Carolina Works and the ATU union. We're meeting with them constantly to try to develop an apprentice program for our mechanics as well as our operators. And it's a really good program. It has a lot of mentorship activities. There's some reimbursement opportunities for training. They help with housing. They help with childcare. They help with all obstacles that prevent you from entering into the workplace. So we're pretty excited about that. Fleet availability, we're at 100% of our PM completions, so they keep our current fleet serviced and available for service. We have the new articulated buses in preparation for the BRT service. These are some of the community outreach activities: food drive, coat drive, Touch a Bus, Susan G. Coleman, vaccination campaign, presidential events, and the list really goes on and on. And as Mike said, we're working on some standardized kind of programs and relationships with nonprofits, so we'll have more visibility in the community. In terms of awards, we got Transit System of the Year, Bus Operator of the Year, and we won second place for the individual rodeo winner and third place overall at the North Carolina Rodeo. Questions for me?
Were you able to compile any information, comparison cities?
I've been
and
asking.
Since you are with Mike,
I have been asking. We've put out some fillers and requested information. It's just no one has been compiling that over the last few years, so it's taken longer than I thought to be able to get all of these other agencies to give me that same information and to make sure that we're comparing apples to apples.
Okay, thank you.
But we are working on it. I have not forgotten.
So also, are there other systems in the nation that have taxi vendors with RapDev?
There are a couple, although Raleigh's our biggest one. It's the biggest system we have with taxi providers.
What are the other systems?
Camarillo, California is one of them. Used to be one of my contracts. Indianapolis Public Transit, Indigo, they use taxi vendors as a overflow. With all that said, though, I don't know that we have any that are quite set up where the taxi provider is like an equal partner in the system. Most of the other places where we have taxi vouchers and taxi vendor programs, it's usually for overflow. So the transit agency itself is operating, van service, and then when they get to capacity or over capacity, they'll push trips out to taxi cabs. I know specifically at Indigo, they have a voucher program that they push out to customers that allows them to purchase a certain amount of taxi vouchers to be used in place of a reservation on their regular system. But the Raleigh system that you all have here is quite progressive. It's I get more calls asking about how you all work than I do from you all asking how others work. It is unique. It's something that you should be very fond of. I think it's a good program. I think it drives efficiency, and with the new technology that's been placed in here, your on-time performance is up, your customer complaints are down, and your cost per trip is almost been cut in half. So I would say the overall program here is a best practice that I like to highlight when we're talking to other agencies about our successes. The taxi cab program here is one that we're bringing up on a regular basis.
Good, thank you. Yes, because from the research I've done, most metropolitan areas spend anywhere from 60 to 90 a trip. And with the taxi vendor costing us $23, Raleigh needs to shout and tell them that we know how it's being done right instead of using the van service. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there other questions about fixed route? We definitely appreciate the efforts that you guys have taken over the last year. The improvements are visible, and continued work to be done as you train all these new drivers and I know we're going to keep looking at on-time performance and keep talking about it because it's the thing that our riders notice the most often. But certainly appreciate the efforts that you're making and transparency and reporting that you bring. I don't know that there were too many people at the table back under old management, but it was very difficult to get the kind of data that you guys bring on a monthly basis. And we are very appreciative of everything that you guys are doing.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're moving right along through this agenda. The next item goes to Mr. Walker. We're going to talk a little bit about next year's schedule.
Yes, thank you. So on the screen, we've listed out all of the Raleigh Transit Authority meeting dates. I think everybody's aware we always meet on the second Thursday of the month. All of the committees meet the week before the Transit Authority meeting, and those meetings are on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. We just wanted to put these dates up. It's also in a memo on board docs, just so that you have that if you want to save it anywhere. And then the last thing we wanted to bring up is we typically take the month of July off. We have looked forward, and at this point, staff doesn't have any major items that we would think we would need to bring to the board. So if you would like to take the month of July off, you would need to take a vote on that and make that motion.
I would entertain a motion to let staff have a vacation from meeting with us in July.
I second that motion so we can have a summer break.
That's a motion from the vice chair because I can't make a motion. So I'm looking for a second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Suarez. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? The motion passes.
Thank you.
Enjoy your time off. The next item is another staff information. Ms. Roush, Rollsville Microtransit.
Good afternoon, everyone. All right, so I'm going to give an update today about the Rollsville Microtransit Service. I am Melanie Roush, one of the senior transit planners on the bus and bus facilities team. Okay, so just as a quick reminder, the Rollsville Microtransit Service was funded in the FY25 Wake Transit Plan Work Plan. I do have that funding code or the project code on the screen here, TC005-BU. And we funded the switch to move from fixed route service to microtransit service due to poor performance of the 401X route. The 401X route currently provides 3 trips in the morning and 3 trips in the evening between Rollsville and Triangle Town Center with a stop at Wake Tech in between. You can see these numbers here that it has an average boarding of 0.5 to 1 per revenue hour. That's really bad and does not meet any of the Wake Transit Plan performance metrics. So we thought it was time to look at changing that service. So I did want to take a moment to kind of explain the difference between microtransit and a regular fixed route service that we normally provide as part of Go Raleigh, at least the bus fleet. So microtransit services, they do not have a fixed route. They operate within a zone. And then they are very similar to old services like Dial-A-Ride, for example, where we are essentially a demand response service. So there won't be a preset route that the microtransit service will travel, and it will be responsive to folks either booking a ride via an app or calling in to book a ride. So I did want to explain that difference, that it won't be traveling along one particular corridor. It will be much more fluid within a particular area. Okay, so on the screen here is the proposed Rollsville zone. This is the zone we are moving forward with at this time. You can see I wanted to make sure we included both the Town of Rollsville corporate limits, City of Raleigh corporate limits, and Town of Wake Forest corporate limits, so you could see how the zone was overlapping within all 3. And of course, there is a large proportion of unincorporated Wake County included within this zone. So Town of Wake Forest is the yellow, which I can tell is a little hard to see on the screen. Rollsville is red, and Raleigh is the darker blue area. So there is significant overlapping with the Town of Wake Forest. And we will be losing that connection to Wake Tech as a part of this zone, but gaining major connections into Wake Forest, which was repeatedly expressed as something that residents of Rollsville are much more interested, that connection to Wake Forest. So we are on track for a July 1st launch. The zone will include 2 operating vehicles. We will use the same Ford cutaway vans that we use for our Go Raleigh access service to operate this service. And we will operate Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. We did alter that time a little bit to ensure that we could still facilitate that connection to the WRX service, so we don't necessarily have to lose those riders who are looking for service to Raleigh. Currently, the service is projected to serve between 40 and 90 rides per day, and that comes out to about 800 to 1,800 rides per month. Okay, so this map just shows some of the final destinations within the Rollsville zone. And I'm sorry, I'm not sure why it's looking like that on the screen. It should be a little more blue and a little easier to see what's happening. But some of the destinations do include the Northern Regional Center that's close to downtown Wake Forest, the Northern Wake Senior Center, the Walmart in Wake Forest, the Wegmans in Wake Forest, both really high demand destinations, schools including Rollsville High School, and assisted living facilities, both within that far southern corridor or southern section of the zone, and then further north within the zone. Okay, so transfer opportunities. As you may know, Wake Forest has voted to move forward with microtransit as well, but their zone will launch, or their service will launch October 1st. So in the interim time, we will provide connections to the Wake Forest loops, both A and B, and the WRX service, which will continue to run beyond October 1st. Okay, so the branding is microlink, and I apologize, the screen is significantly different colors than what I'm seeing over here, but it is much closer to a burgundy color. This is the branding we'll go with. This is what will be displayed on the vans. And major thanks and shout out to Andrew, because he developed this and did an awesome job. Okay, so I wanted to take you through how to book a ride on the MicroLink app. So riders will open the app. It'll have this landing page that you can see kind of on the left side here. And then it will ask riders where they would like to go. So usually in order to use the app to begin with, they will have to enter a phone number or an email address. And once they enter that phone number, they'll receive a verification code, very similar to how the Cardinal Bike Share works. And then once they get that verification code, they'll be ready to go and ready to book a ride. So they'll say, where would you like to go? They'll put where they're trying to go. There are options to remember your home address or remember a common destination to make it easier to book in the future. Once you denote where you would like to go, the app will then generate an estimated time of how long that will take. And then you can select book ride. And once you select book ride, then the trip will start. That information will go to the driver, and the driver will begin moving towards the rider's destination or the rider's origin so that we can get them to the destination. Microtransit does commingle rides, so it is possible that additional passengers will be picked up on the ride if it is efficient. So I believe what it said is for a 10-minute ride, a 5-minute detour can be allowed, and for a 20-minute ride, up to a 10-minute detour can be allowed, assuming it's still somewhat along the same route. It wouldn't deviate completely across the zone or anything crazy like that. There is alternative options for folks who don't want to use the app or would have trouble operating an app. Perhaps their cell phone isn't great or they don't have a smartphone. They can call into our dispatch, and dispatch can book that ride for them. So that is also an alternative option that will always be available. Okay. And that is all I have for the MicroLink service. Any questions?
I have a couple, and then I'll let other folks go. First, can you remind us who will be operating the microtransit?
Yes, so that will be our access folks will handle the dispatch, and then RHEP Dev will handle operations.
Okay. And then how does that interact with paratransit service, or like is the service area the same? And could you elaborate on how that works a little bit?
So it'll essentially be separate. There will be 2 drivers assigned to the microtransit zone, and they will just drive that zone all day. They won't commingle with paratransit services, not at this time anyways.
Okay. And then will the same area of service be available for paratransit services, though? Because I guess with the 401X, there would have been an area that was available for paratransit along that.
Now, the 401X was not eligible for paratransit because it was a commuter-type service, and that's not, paratransit is not required on that commuter-type service where you do 3 morning trips and, 3 or 4 evening trips.
So will this have a parallel paratransit?
No, because it's essentially
The same thing.
it's better than paratransit because you can call in a trip right now and be picked up immediately.
More on demand.
Okay. I think it's just helpful to
They're both-
articulate how those things work together.
They're both door-to-door type services.
Okay. And then I think there were a few other questions.
Yes.
So the
go ahead.
microtransit is on-demand service?
Yeah, just think Uber and Lyft. It's essentially that. There's an app provided by Via is the name of the software company that whose app we're using, and you open that app, you get started, click the Get Started button, tell it where you're at and where you want to go, and it'll tell you when that van will be there.
What is the cost? What will the cost be for the trip?
The Finance and Policy Committee had that conversation earlier this year, or maybe even late last year. I can't recall what it is. I think the recommendation from that committee was to charge the same rate as the paratransit at $250. However, right now, to our east, the Smart Ride is operating at no cost, and the Wake Forest Loop, when it converts to microtransit, will be operating at no charge, at least during a pilot period for 1 year. So we're mimicking the same thing that Wake County is doing with the Smart Ride and Wake Forest is doing with their microtransit, and we're going to offer it as a pilot for no charge during that first year. And then we'll work together with those 2 partners to try to bring that fare into the picture.
Thank you.
Ms. Williams?
Oh, will there be like a demo online to like how people to use the app?
Yes, so we're working on preparing a whole slew of engagement and marketing materials for the product launch. And we do have a kind of a test ride on the books. So Via's going to come down here, I believe, June 20th. And we're going to kind of go through the whole service with the dispatch crew. And then we'll do a test ride. We'll take a vehicle up to Rollsville and do a test service so that, all the operators feel comfortable with how that's going to work and make sure all the tablets and everything that's involved in the process are set up and working well. So once we get over that hump, I think that the marketing team, along with the planning team, will work closely together to create some materials to get the word out there to explain how it works. And then we've partnered with the town of Rollsville to they'll help us disseminate those materials at various community centers and on their social media avenues as well. Because in the end of the day, this really is a service more for the town of Rollsville than for Raleigh. So we think it's important that they're involved in that engagement effort as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We'd like to be good partners with everyone else in the Wake Transit Plan. Go ahead.
Do you know if microtransit comes up as like an option if I Google Map transit directions?
It should.
Right.
I know we can,
Not specifically for this, but I'm curious if,
yeah, it
as
should.
for an awareness point of view, right?
Yeah, it should. Creating
That later.
the world of putting transit feeds into Google is a very complex thing. And I do believe that microtransit, they have created a feed capability for microtransit services within Google. We are not currently in it. And that would have to be something we explore because I'm not sure we know how to get in their feed. But I do know that Sylvia's looked into it. So
Hopefully Via does.
Yeah.
Can we put that on the marketing committee agenda for August, acting chair?
Sure.
Thank you, Melanie.
Thank you.
Next would be committee reports, which we did not meet this month because we knew that most everything wanted to have the whole board's attention for all of the committees. And general manager's report we've already received as part of the year in review. So I will just ask if there are any concluding remarks from authority members or staff. And I was wondering, as part of this, if maybe Mr. Walker, you could give us an update on where the budget conversations are with City Council, if there's any updates since the last time that we met. I know they've met a couple times and you've presented to them, but I don't know if there's been any updates.
You want me to go first?
Sure.
Yes, Mr. Eatman presented to council at their June the 4th meeting. Basically, we had provided a similar presentation at a work session, I believe, back in March. Council received that presentation, and there was some discussion, I believe, at the table regarding our fares and the recommendations that came from this board. No vote was taken, or there wasn't a tremendous amount of conversation at that June 4th meeting. At the June 10th work session, the council members did hear those options and recommendations from the Transit Authority. Again, they did vote, take a separate vote on the R line, and they did agree to begin charging fares on the R line effective in July with the rest of the service. There was conversation at the table regarding the other recommendation regarding paratransit and equity in those fares to fixed route, but no vote was taken on that. And then at that same meeting, ultimately the budget was voted on and adopted, and the budget for transit did include fares for both Go Raleigh and Go Raleigh Access at the pre-pandemic rates.
Thank you for that update. I know not everyone can make every meeting, so it's good to have it repeated here. Are there any other concluding remarks from the table?
Yes, thank you, David, for that report. I have a lot of concerns because in 18 days, paratransit community will be expected to pay fares. And there hasn't been any presentation on the low-income program. I did receive information that there is a transit assistance program that I have never heard of before, and I haven't seen any information. So I would like to listen to the board and see what their thoughts on delaying the paratransit portion fare, making a motion to City Council that we will delay this until the paratransit community has information of how the payments to be made. I understand the app is not ready yet. And in the past, we had the paratransit community had to go and purchase tickets. I was communicated that the taxi vendors would collect the fares, but I have problems with that because we don't know whether or not they collected.
Thank you for that question. Mr. Walker or Mr. Eatman could, I know that we had asked council to consider a transition period. What is the current status of that in terms of what staff is working on?
Yeah, that's one thing I left out that was communicated to City Council. We will have a soft rollout. We're essentially considering July and potentially into August as an educational period where we teach you, educate you on what it takes to pay fares, since it's been 4 years since we've had to go through that process. So on July 1, if you have a trip booked and you don't know how to pay a fare, your trip will be provided. Nobody will be denied a trip either on the access system or the fixed route service if they don't know how to purchase a fare. We only found out on the 10th that the budget was going to be passed and what our final direction was. We do have materials. Some are already developed. We're continuing to develop additional materials that we can start distributing. I believe we put out a press release today that talked a little bit about it. So there's a lot of information that will start being pushed out to the media and to the public. We'll be communicating. I believe Sean and maybe David Eatman both will be at the Mayor's Committee next Thursday. There'll be some conversation about fares and the Transit Assistance Program. I'll kind of switch gears and talk about that a little bit now. The reason you haven't heard a whole lot about it is because it's still under development. It's a program. Go Triangle and Go Raleigh staff have been working over the last several months putting this together. We've also been working with the Wake County Continuum of Care providers if we needed to have them as a first phase, pushing that out for their clients. But at the end of the day, we have had one meeting recently with the Wake Transit Plan Advisory Committee. I believe it was last week where we actually reviewed kind of a scope for what that transit assistance plan program will look like. It had no language in it regarding paratransit. We made comments regarding that. We've added suggested language, and I believe it came out yesterday, an updated draft of that language that does include paratransit. So the next steps are, putting the final touches on what that plan looks like, bringing it to the TPAC, the Transit Planning Advisory Committee, which will take a vote and then forward that, assuming they approve that, up to the Campo Executive Board and the Go Triangle Executive Board for final approval, which is what will be needed in order to fund that Transit Assistance Program, or TAP. So fares will still be there. If you're not eligible for the Transit Assistance Program as either a fixed route or a Go Raleigh Access trip, then you would have to pay a fare. But once this program is fully developed, if you're eligible for the Transit Assistance Program, you would not be required to pay a fare because it will be reimbursable by the Wake Transit Plan. So our revenues are still intact, just instead of coming from the clients and the riders, coming from the Wake Transit Plan.
I think that information is helpful. And I think that from previous discussions at this table, that the concern is about the timing and how we communicate that to the public. So I know that staff is working. Obviously, some of those things are outside of Go Raleigh and Raleigh's control. And so I think for the benefit of our riders, for the benefit of the operators who will be the frontline deliverers of this messaging, I think having good, not just verbal communication, not just news communication, but postcards and handouts that we can take some of that weight off the operators to explain. I think we hope that there's not a day where someone would qualify for an assistance program that exists and not know that it exists and turn around and get off the bus. That's what none of us want, right? And so I think since we're not meeting in July and we won't be talking until August when some of these things are in place, it's part of the other reason why we're expressing these thoughts to you now, because you guys will be handling the tough stuff without us. Is there anything that our committees will need to look at in terms of any of those things when they come back in August?
Not as far as taking action. The approvals would happen through the TPAC governance process because they approve the funding of those programs. We can certainly bring those programs and provide them as information items just so that everybody's aware and fully engaged in how they will work. As far as the access program, clients have to call in to book their trips. We can put a message on the recording that they get for the first 10, 15 seconds, providing additional information as soon as it's available to, and just confirming for them that don't panic. A transit assistance program is going to be available, assuming it's approved by the TPAC, and January or July will certainly be an educational month where nobody's going to be required to pay a fare.
So July the 1st, what is the plan to collect the fares for the paratransit?
July 1st, and well, all of July will be an educational month where nobody's going to be required to pay a fare if they don't have it.
Will we get a documentation that it was sent out to the vendors for confirmation that they were notified so that my community doesn't reach out to me and they're being demanded to pay? Because we're not dealing with city employees, we're an outside vendor.
You're talking about the taxis?
Yes.
Yeah, we can certainly communicate with the taxis. They have not been told that they would be collecting fares. They've not been told that they would need to collect tickets. That's all a new process. And if you're getting that message, then we can certainly reach out to the taxis tomorrow. Send out we've got everybody's emails, and so we can get that out ASAP.
Yes, I would appreciate a letter sent to all the taxi vendors letting them know it is a soft landing.
For the record, taxis will have taxis will not be collecting any kind of fare. They're not involved in that process anymore. Previous to the pandemic and the suspension, they were required to collect a ticket for each trip, but that has gone away with the software. It's all handled behind the scenes.
When do we have anticipation the app will be ready for the consumers?
It's hopefully sometime mid-July, but the app is not required again to book a trip. The app is not required to buy a fare if you're not qualified for the Transit Assistance Program. We're getting set up with our finance department to take credit card transactions over the phone. So we would take care of that through the call center where you actually book your trip.
Thank you.
May I ask a question? Considering you saying that there's supposed to be a soft turnover in July, and you believe August is supposed to be when things are supposed to go into place, in my head, I'm thinking clocks, calendars, and costs. July and August is not enough time to notify the community because you have a wide berth of people who don't read the newspaper. They get most of their information off of their phones. And in regards to calendars, 90 days is more than enough time to try to communicate to the community to let them know that it's coming. By that time, you will know if you have a problem with your app. And that was the thing that was a problem last year. The app, the software for the transit had a problem, and they went through a series of issues before it finally got all of the kinks out of it. And then cost. People got to get ready. They have to get their budgets together to know how much money they're going to be spending on it. And what is everybody complaining about? Costs of everything. So in my head, I would recommend 90 days, which would mean September 30th, if you're saying July.
It's a 90-day soft start. We'll be educating in July. We'll continue to educate in August. In September, we'll start getting a little bit more, I'll use the word assertive, as we're communicating with riders if they're still not paying fares. But nobody's going to be denied a trip in that first 90 days if they don't have their fare. We will be continually communicating with them. The majority of our riders are very consistent. You're going to see the same driver day after day after day, and that driver's going to know that he has spoken to you 16 times. So at some point, if that person's not getting the message, as we get closer to October, then he will start having that customer talk with a supervisor. And we'll be making sure that everyone is aware of the Transit Assistance Program because that works for fixed route just like it would for the Access Program, again, assuming it's approved by the TPAC. So there's going to be a tremendous amount of communication. We're going to have digital media down at Go Raleigh Station. We have I think it's 8,000 trips a day going through that station. So the majority of our riders go through there. And we're going to have digital media on board the bus. We're going to be pushing digital, messaging through all the software, social media apps. 90 days is a good amount of time to be getting that message out. We've already done the, press releases. I'm fairly confident that our riders will be educated by the time October rolls around.
So just to piggyback up, I know we talked about 90 days before, but it sounds like we have a lot of gray areas. So it's like, okay, you can do, she can pay in August, I can pay in September. I think we need to be consistent and precise with our communication and say effective whatever date, October 1st, everyone has to pay versus, oh, you have to pay or you don't have to pay. Because I can see conflict right there, and that can be conflict for the operators, or why she paid and I didn't, or why am I kicked off the bus? So I think we need to be very clear in our communication that effective this date, fares go into effect. Go Triangle has already done the communication. I'm not sure why we're kind of behind. If there was a press release, I have not seen any communication about that. We're using social media, but we need to use social media more and better and keep pushing it constantly, because some of the communication I see out there on social media does not answer all the questions. We assume that some of the riders know, but again, we have to communicate like you don't know. We have to communicate to new riders and future riders. So we can't assume what people know. We always have to communicate to assume what people don't know. So
we've not pushed anything out other than that one press release today, so hasn't been any communication yet for people to be confused about.
okay. But I'm just saying, some of the communications lead to questions. So if there's room for questions, that means we're not communicating effectively. So the communication should be answering the questions: who, what, where, and why. So when does the fares go in effect? How much? Where's the cost? And we can't just focus on the Go Raleigh station, because not everyone is going to the Go Raleigh stations. Where is the Go Raleigh station? Because if I come down Harger Street, I have no idea where Moore Square is. There's no signage. So we have to be visually communicating everywhere, and not to just one demographic, not to one news channel, because not everyone uses the same news channel. And we're communicating. So I challenge marketing, even though we're going to be on a summer break, to send emails making sure that everyone is aware of these changes.
Yeah, thank you guys, everyone at the table, for your input. I think this is a big change after 4 years of no fares for everyone. And again, what you're hearing is our thoughts, because we don't get to share them with you as you go through this next month and deal with the introduction of fares to the public. And I think particularly the highlights to keep in mind are that there is a 90-day transition period, that we communicate effectively to people that they won't be denied a ride, but that we are returning to fares, and that was the decision. And so payments can be accepted, and be clear about when, for the different services, those payments can be accepted, because we do have multiple ones. And I think the final piece of that is to, when we come back in August and there are some updates on the low-income program, let's be really transparent in our board meetings to have updates that the public can access, because I think how that program gets implemented and that timeline then may have considerations for how that 90 days in September and October actually play out. And so I think we want to stay updated in this meeting so that that is accessible to the public as well. Is that fair? All right. I think that was quite a lot, maybe possibly the longest concluding remarks we've ever had at an RTA meeting, but it's an important issue, and I thank you all for your time and consideration on it. If that is everyone's final thoughts, then I will call this meeting adjourned at 5:20 p.m.